Excuse me. I don't have my phone on vibrate. And it just dinged. There we go. Okay. All right. Chapter 5. This is interesting. We finished up chapter 5, verses 1 and 2 last week because it was part of chapter 4. But in chapter 5, verse 2 and following, it's a whole new scenario. Let's read some of the verse and then we'll go back and go through it. The Shulamite, this is Abishag. This is Solomon's bride. This is the bride, the wife. She says this, I sleep, but my heart is awake. It is the voice of my beloved. He knocks, saying, open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks or the curls with the drops of the night. That's what he says. I have taken off my robe, she says. How can I put it on again? I have washed my feet. How can I defile them? My beloved put his hand on the latch of the door. You can just see him reaching out and taking that doorknob. He reached out his hand for the latch of the door, and my heart yearned for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the lock. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and was gone. She hesitated. We're going to look at that in depth in a second. My heart leaped up when he spoke. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchman who went about the city found me. So she did put on her shoes and put on her coat, and she went out looking for him. And then the watchman of the city found her. They didn't recognize, they didn't know she was the king's bride. They found me, struck me, wounded me. They just kind of slapped her around a little bit, abused her. Struck me, wounded me. The keepers of the walls took my veil away from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him, I am lovesick. And they answered in return, what is your beloved more than another beloved, O fairest among women? What is your beloved more than another beloved that you so charge? What's so special about him, they're saying? I mean, he comes home, he knocks on the door, you don't answer the door, he goes off in a huff, and now you're suddenly wanting him? What's going on? What's so special about him that you would charge us, order us, command us to go find him? Then verse 10, she's answering these daughters of Jerusalem, whoever they might be, the maidens of the castle, the bridesmaids, and her best friends, her girls, we don't know. She says, my beloved is white and ruddy, chief among the 10,000. His head is like the finest gold. His locks are wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the rivers of waters washed with milk and fitly set or firmly set. His cheeks are like a bed of spices, banks of scented herbs. His lips are lilies, dripping liquid myrrh. His hands are rods of gold set with beryl. His body is carved ivory, inlaid with sapphire. We're going to look at all this in detail in a minute or two. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of fine gold. His countenance is like Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet. Yes, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So what's going on here? Well, she's asleep. She's asleep, and she's in her room. Now you think, how come he has to knock on the door? Can't he just walk into his bed? It wasn't his bedroom. It was her bedroom. Remember in ancient times, in wealthy homes and wealthy families, each spouse had their own room. You remember in chapter 2, as she was swooning over him, she said, I'm going to take him to my mama's house, to my mama's inner chamber. I'm going to take him to my mama's house, to her bedroom. That's where I'm going to take him. Not to my parents' bed, to my mother's bedroom. Quite common that the bride and the groom had separate rooms. Now, where they would go for times of interlude, I'm not sure. It could be hers, could be his. Maybe there's a third bedroom just for that. But here, he comes to her bedroom. She's asleep, but her heart's awake. She's kind of been half. You ever been like that? You think you hear the doorbell ringing, but you're not sure. So you get up, you look out the window. Oh, there's nobody there. But so you're kind of half awake, half asleep. And she hears his voice, and he knocks. And he says, "Open for me, my sister." And the word sister there doesn't refer to his biological sister, more like my friend, my companion, we might say my girlfriend. So he says, "Open for me, my love, my companion, my dove, my perfect one." Well, he knows how to talk. From chapter 1 we saw that. My perfect one. He says, "For my head is covered with dew, the locks, as my curls with the drops." He's outside. He's been outside. He's probably been working. He is the king. He doesn't work from 8 to 5. He has things he has to do at night. He has to go out in his royal chariot, known as royal steed. He has to go out sometimes. And in Israel, at night, it's not uncommon for the dew to be especially heavy. We've seen that. Even here, you go out sometimes at night and it's kind of misty. You just walk through and you get wet. And so his head is wet. His locks are drops of the night. And he wants to come into her. You see, love doesn't keep a stopwatch. He doesn't say, "Well, it's 11 o'clock. It's too late." No, he's a husband, a newlywed husband, a groom, and he wants his wife. That's just normal for a young man, a young groom. So he knocks on the door. He doesn't kick it open. He doesn't barge in. He shows her respect. He makes a nice husband request, but she's a little bit peeved. Look what she says in verse 3. Now, what is the most standard humorous excuse that a woman gives her husband when she's not interested? I have a headache. Thank you. I have a headache. Oh, my back's killing me tonight. I mean, there's something, that she'll throw out there. And listen, the guy can do it too, okay? He can do it. You just don't hear it that often, but he can too. So she's got this, "I put off my robe. How can I put it on again? I've washed my feet. How can I?" Now, let's think about this for a second. The word robe. Now, you don't get this from looking at the English translation. But what she said to him was, "I've already taken off my undergarments." Because the robe was a tunic. The tunic was worn underneath the clothes against the skin. But yes, we're all adults. There's no kids here. We can be honest. She takes this thing, puts it on her body, and this tunic clings against her bare skin. And we would call that an undergarment, would we not? And that's what she said. And she says, "I've taken it off. How can I put it on again?" Now, you know that his eyes went like that when she said that, because he knows what a tunic is. It's not that she took off her bath. I have a nice bathrobe at home. You know where I got it? The Old Henry Hotel. It's the Old Henry. It's big and it's heavy. And when you wash that thing, you pull it out, it is really heavy. Throw it in that dryer, it comes out fluffy, but it's still heavy. It's nice and thick, got a big old thing about it, a collar, pockets, it got a big old thick robe, a belt around it. That's not what she's talking about. She's talking about something slinky that she's just taken off. So what she's telling him, I don't have anything on. It's a lot of trouble getting dressed. It just is. You ever watched Gone with the Wind? When Scarlett got dressed, how she had to have Mammy help her. It wasn't a matter of throwing something on. Well, it's like this in Bible times. I've taken off, and I've washed my feet. You say, "Well, what's the big deal about that?" Well, they didn't have shoes like this in those days. They wore sandals, and it was dirty. They didn't have sidewalks and things like that. And so at the end of the day, your feet were dirty and sweaty and dusty, and she took off and she washed them. And they were clean, and she had anointed them. She got into bed, and to get up, she's got to put her feet back on that cold, dark, dirty marble floor or whatever it's made of. And so she's giving excuses, but you might say they're justified reasons. I got my clothes off. I've washed my feet, So he puts his hand to the door. My heart yearned for him. So she has second thoughts. She jumps up, tunic notwithstanding, bare feet notwithstanding. She flew to the door. I rose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh. Remember what myrrh was? It was a fragrance, beautiful fragrance. And my hands dripped with myrrh. My fingers with liquid myrrh. She had doused herself with Jean Naté. Is that what it is? Jean, what's it called? Jean Naté. Oh, Chanel number 5. You like that better, D? So she had, she looked good. She smelled good. And she runs to the door. She threw the door, verse 6, open for my beloved. And what happened? He's gone. He was gone. She hurt his feelings. She denied his rightful, husbandly rights. Now, we can debate timing all we want to. We can say, listen, he should have made an appointment. He should have, if he's going to work late, he should have sent a messenger. Honey, I'm sorry, I was going to be there by supper time tonight, but listen, the cows are out. This has happened. We saw some strange soldiers over, and we're out there. It could be the Egyptians, could be the Philistines. I don't know. I'm out there helping my soldiers. Could be something of royal. But he didn't send her a message. All she knew, he didn't come when he was supposed to, and she had gone to bed. He comes, knocks on the door, demanding his husbandly rights, and she gave these what we might think silly excuses. But in that culture, they're a little bit reasonable, I guess. But then she changed her mind. She jumped up, ran to him, opened the door. But my beloved had turned away and was gone. My heart leaped up when he spoke. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him. He gave me no answer. He ran out, calling, Solomon, Solomon, Solomon. Now, I don't know if he heard her voice and just, she won't open the door. I'm not going to answer. I'm going to hide over here. I don't know what he's doing. But he didn't answer her. She was looking. You see, I'm calling this, and you'll get the notes, the Heartaches on the Honeymoon. This is their first tiff. Even Solomon and Abishag had their first tiff. Anybody remember your first tiff with your spouse? You remember our first tiff? I wonder if it's the same one I remember. We may want to. No, let's not. Let's leave that buried. Okay. She's going like this. So this is their first little marital spat, and she goes after him. She gives excuses. We saw all of that, et cetera, et cetera. And so now let me just talk about this for a second. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because we don't know the exact context of this night. But I know that sometimes I've done a lot of marital counseling, a lot of premarital counseling over the last decades. And one thing I try to communicate to young brides is that their husbands are not beasts. They're not beasts. They're not wild animals because they're interested in that. And usually the bride, not so much. Some are, but on the average, no, they're, but what I try to communicate to them is that they're not beasts, they're not savage, they're how God made them. God gave men this desire. Now, some men have it more than others. Most men have it more than women, although I've had a couple of counseling sessions with women that were just as strong as the husband. Very unusual, though. And so you might think, well, he's just a beast. He should have just, no. This is a need. And it's hard to communicate to a young bride of 23 or 25 that this desire her groom has is a need. But it's a need. Just like a need for water, a need for bread, a need for air. It's a need. I'm not going to ask the men to raise their hands in agreement, but you know I'm telling the truth. It's a need. And the younger you are, the greater the need. But for many men, it's still a need when they're on their last legs and we're on Medicare. It's still, God puts it in it. That's how God made us. And so the bride needs to understand this is a need, and it's her job under God, as God gives her ability and health and strength to meet that need. Because I tell you, if they don't, the devil will send somebody that will. You got to watch out for that. And so this is a good illustration here that she had second thoughts. She opened the door. She ran. Her heart leaped up when he spoke. She sought him, could not find him, and she goes and looking for him, puts herself at risk and her reputation. The watchman, that is the policeman that roamed the city, they didn't recognize her. She had not been the queen very long. They didn't recognize her royal veil. They didn't recognize her face. It was dark. It was nighttime, and all they saw was this woman. And a lot of times prostitutes wore these veils. So they thought she might be a woman of the night, and so they just kind of abused her wrongfully, but that's what they did. And so she put herself at risk and their marriage. And okay, he should have let her know. I'll grant you that. But still, when he came, it's not like he was banging on the door and yelling and screaming. He just knocked. And he called her. He called her. What did he say? Open for me, my sister, that is my best friend, my love, my dove, my perfect one. All these sweet names he has for her, and she knows what he's interested in because they're newlyweds, and he loves her. He wants to express that, and she wasn't interested at first. Then she changed her mind, and she went looking for him because she wanted to satisfy him as she should. Let's see. Let's look down at first. Just put your finger here. Yeah, we're doing good on time. Keep your finger here and go back to 1 Corinthians in the New Testament, chapter 7. 1 Corinthians 7. This is a chapter that preachers really don't like preaching on. That's why you don't hear them go through 1 Corinthians very often. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 1, he says, now concerning the things which you wrote to me. So apparently the Corinthian church, which was no stranger to fleshly problems, remember? They were acquainted with all kinds of sins and things like in 1 Corinthians. If I moved to Corinthia, I'd have started the 2 Corinthian church, I believe. But anyway, that's not what it's called, 1 Corinthians, of course. But anyway, he says in verse 1, now concerning the things of which you wrote to me. So they wrote him about this. They said, Paul, this is what's going on. So he's writing back. It is good for a man not to touch a woman. Now that phrase, touch a woman, that's the King James, that's the New King James. He's not simply saying it's good for a man not to touch a woman. The word touch is a nice King James word which means to arouse, set on fire. So he's simply saying, it is good for a man not to sexually arouse a woman. Nevertheless, because of immorality, sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, let each woman have her own husband. And let the husband render to his wife, that is, give to his wife, the affection due her. And likewise also the wife, give the affection due to him. The wife does not have authority over her own body. I'm sorry, ladies. When you say I do, you're giving yourself to your husband. I bet you ain't memorized that verse. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband, and likewise the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Oh, it's okay. What's good for the goose is what? Sauce for the gander. So, when you get married, you belong to one another. You see, his body belongs to the bride's body belongs to the man. This does not give either one the right to abuse or use or misuse the other. The fact that the husband has a right to his wife's body does not give him the right to demand things of her, to speak to her, to abuse her in any way. Nor does the woman have a right to do that to her husband. Because what's the basis of that Christian marriage? Somebody say love. Love. And true love includes respect and admiration and affection. True love never demands its own rights. Doesn't do that. See, always seeks the best benefit for the spouse. And that's what he's saying here. It's good that a man not to sexually arouse a woman, but because of the sexual needs And to avoid immorality, then each man has his own wife, woman has her own husband, and they render to one another what they need, but one does not demand from the other that which the other cannot give. Let the husband render his wife affection due her, etc., etc. Go down to verse 5. Do not deprive one another. Get this? Do not deprive one another except for fasting and prayer. And that's like saying, okay, honey, we got 7 days starting Monday night. But I'm going to be fasting and praying on Wednesday and Thursday. And she said, well, that's interesting because I've got to do this and this on Friday and Saturday. Okay, so those days are out. Well, how about tomorrow night? See, they come and they agree. You say, where does that give way to just spontaneous romance? Believe me, it'll happen. But you have to agree that you might separate for a time. It could be spiritual reasons, it could be physical reasons, health reasons. But he's saying that don't deprive one another except with consent for you got to be in agreement with each other. And fasting and prayer is one of them. But then you come together again. Notice this, so that what? Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. You see, when a husband and wife deny each other that romantic thing. Now, the wife, so I'm told, because I'm not a woman, needs affection. She needs affection, she needs warmth, she needs tenderness, she needs reassurance from her husband. The husband needs the physical aspect. And so he's simply saying that if you don't do that, Satan will come in and he will tempt you for your lack of self-control. Because he knows what's going on in every marriage. And if there's an openness there, a sexual need not being met on a consistent basis, don't be surprised that the devil sends one of his minions called demons to come in and tempt that husband or tempt that wife. And it's amazing where temptation comes from. I mean, I've seen some things that would shock you. How the devil sent somebody in. It happens. I had a lady in one of my churches I may have told you this before because it's an interesting illustration. But in my motorcycle days, one of the guys was a big bike. In fact, he taught me. And he was about 20 years older than me, so he was a senior, but I called him Mr. G. And he had a big gold wing. I didn't have a gold wing. Never did. But anyway, I had my bike, he had his, and we had a group of about 26 eventually that rode with us on Sunday afternoons, and we took trips and all. But he couldn't get his wife to ride on that gold wing. Wouldn't do it because of her hair. You know what I mean, you put a helmet on, it's going to do it. You don't put a helmet on, it's going to blow it to smithereens. So I went to her and I said, Miss G, if you don't ride on that back of that bike with Mr. G, the devil will send someone that will ride with him. Boy, the next time she was right there. Remember, she put this big old scarf around her head to keep that hair, and she rode with him to the day he died. Yeah, good for her, exactly right. He, by the way, was he was in Vietnam. How many of you guys remember, I may be pronouncing it wrong, the Son-Tay Raiders? It was an Air Force group, and they flew into Cambodia called the Son-Tay Raiders. He was one of those guys. He also was a jet trainer for the Air Force after Vietnam. He was in for 30 years. Great man. Interesting, sad, but interesting. He had his own little light airplane, lighter than air, had fiber. Anyway, it crashed and he died in the plane crash, which is just how he would have liked to have gone out, that or a motorcycle. So anyway, the devil will take advantage of your lack of self-control, so you got to be careful you don't give him a doorway into your marriage in that area. So, all right, let's move on to chapter 6 here. Oh, we're still in chapter 5. Okay, please pray I get it through chapter 6. All right, chapter 5, verse 9. Whole new situation. Look at verse. So she goes out wanting him, looking for him. And the daughters of Jerusalem, we don't know who these are. Remember, these could be her bridesmaids, her best friends, the handmaids. We don't know who it is, her girls. And so they say, what is your beloved more than another beloved? O fairest among women? What is your beloved more than another beloved? She's saying, why is he so special? Because she's asked him, help me find him. And they're saying, hey, what's so special about him? Why are you looking for him? Y'all just got married. Y'all ought to be together. What's so special that you got to go look for him? Well, what's the big deal that you charge us to help you find him? So verse 10, Abishag, look what she says about him. She kind of lets us know what's so special about Solomon. And she describes him, again, with some interesting ways. We'll just read through it, stop and make some comments along the way. We'll get to chapter 6. She says, my beloved is white and ruddy, chief among 10,000. Now, this is the way she would say, chief among 10,000. She's simply saying he's one in a million. One in a million. He is outstanding. He is the best. That's what's special about this guy. He's white. He's radiant. These terms, as he stands there, he's white. His skin, he's ruddy. And he's the chief. He's the best of everything. He's the chief of 10,000. His head is like finest gold. His locks are wavy, black as raven. His eyes are like doves. Remember, doves was a figure in Scripture of faithfulness and loyalty. And she pictures his eyes like doves, by rivers of waters washed with milk and fitly set. I thought, what does that do to the doves? So I looked up, in fact, just this morning, I looked up doves, pictures of doves, close pictures of doves. And you look at their eyes, and their eyes are dark and black. But around the rim is either white or pink. And it does look like a little bit of water. It's like these black onyx eyes are set in a little pool of red, pink, or white pool of water. And that's where she's saying, he's like a dove's eyes with rivers of waters washed with milk and fitly set, firmly set. His eyes are like singular. He's not always looking around him. He's got set eyes, focused. And she admired. His cheeks are like bed of spices, bank of scented herbs. His lips like lilies dripping. So he's talking how good he smells, which we've seen that before. This guy smells great, okay? Verse 14, his hands are like rods of gold. So his hands obviously are big. His fingers are they're long, they're big hands, a rod of gold, set with beryl, maybe rings around his fingers. His body, that's his abdomen, carved with ivory. He's got, we call that six-pack abs, don't we, guys? Not that I've ever had one. I'm tired of trying to get it. It's just too much trouble for me. But he had six-pack abs. His body is carved. It's carved ivory, inlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of marble, set on bases of fine gold. That's his feet. His legs are strong and long and like fine marble, set on bases of fine gold. His countenance, that his look is like Lebanon. Now, Lebanon, if you remember, was the north part of Israel. This is Jerusalem. Here's the Sea of the Mediterranean Sea to the west. And you go way up north, and there's Lebanon up there. Big high mountains and great trees, tall, kind of like the redwoods of Northwest America. Cedars. And they talk about the cedars of Lebanon. And when David built the temple, where did he get his trees? Some from Lebanon. And so she's saying, man, not only is he this, he is tall like a tree of Lebanon. Maybe he's like 6'4", 6'5". He's tall. His mouth is most sweet. He's altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. Go find him. They just asked her, why are you looking for him? Because he's the best. I want him back. Please help me find him. And so she names all his characteristics and his appearances, and she's looking for him. Now, I bring us to chapter 6. This is connected with chapter 5. Where has your beloved gone? This is the same story. In fact, remember the chapter divisions are not inspired. Chapter division verses were added hundreds and hundreds of years after the scripture were completed. So chapter 5, verse 16 is connected to chapter 6, verse 1. Same context. Where has your beloved gone, O fairest among women? Where has your beloved turned aside that we may see? Where do you think he's gone? Where do we start looking? We look over here, we look over here, go to the north, the south. Where do we look for him? Do you know where he is? She says, my beloved is gone to his garden, to the bed of spices, to feed his flock in the gardens, to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds his flock among the lilies. You see, she is, if you're going to, you have a tiff, you have a break in the relationship like they just had early on in their newlywed days. How do you heal the broken heart? Well, number one, you got to want it. She didn't let her pride say, that's how he's going to be? Be a cold day before I go looking for him. I'm going back to my room, take off this thing, take off my shoes. I'm going back to bed. He can just do what he wants to. Now, haven't we all felt that way once in a while? You don't have to answer. I know the truth. Well, she could have said that, but she didn't. She wants him. She wants reconciliation. She wants to get back. She wants to get right with him. And so where is he? She says, he's gone to his garden. See, she understands that he's still the king. He's got work to do. And apparently on this day, the royal garden required his attention. That doesn't mean he goes out there with a spade and pruning shears. He's out there. No, he had workers to do that. But sometimes the king has to go in and do what? Supervise. You got to manage. You got to show your kingly royal presence to get those people that's working, your servants, to get inspired by your authority, your presence to do the job. So he's out there overlooking his garden. And she says, I know that's where he is. But she wants reconciliation. So she's got her girlfriends looking for him. Then she says this in verse 3 of chapter 6. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. Have you ever heard her say that before? Somebody say, yeah. Chapter 2, verse 16. Only here she reversed it. In chapter 2, 16, she says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. She's reversed it. I am my beloved's, and he's mine. We belong to each other. That's that attitude of possession. Not ownership, but possession. He belongs to me. I belong to him. We go together. God's put us together. That which God has put together, let no man put asunder. He feeds his flock among the lilies. That's the best place to look for him. This is Tuesday morning. He always goes to the garden. Or this is Thursday. Or this is whatever. He goes to the garden. That's where he probably is. Go look for him. So the beloved, maybe he heard all this. Maybe one of those palace women went and found him. But the beloved, who is Solomon, he's quoted here. He says, oh, my love, you are as beautiful as Tirzah, lovely as Jerusalem. Well, let's talk about that for a second. We see this again, how he is a sweet talker. The thing about it, it's not put on. He really feels that way. He really feels that way. Now, I'm not going to embarrass Susie by telling you how I woo her with my words, but quite often, because we're older now, okay, we're up in our early 70s, and, we're not kids anymore and all, but to me, she is as beautiful as she was the day we married. Now, she doesn't believe that. But in my heart, I feel that way. She still is that way to me. And that's what he's saying here. He says, oh, my love, you are as beautiful. Tirzah was known as a city that was up high. And he says, you are as lovely as Jerusalem. Now think about this. Jerusalem was located on what? Mountain. Mount Zion. That's where the temple was, and the temple was the highest place in Jerusalem. And so when you come up Like, for instance, we went across, when we were there, go across the Kidron Valley, and you go up across up to the Mount of Olives in that area. You can look across, and you can see the whole city of Jerusalem, and you can see the temple. Now, right now, not the temple, but the Temple Mount, the rock, the Dome of the Rock is there. That's the Muslim mosque. It's located on that site, but it's gorgeous. And when you come from the other side, you come from the east up towards Jerusalem, you see those walls. In Bible times, in Solomon's times, it was all gold. And the temple was gold. And when you come up and the sun is striking it, can you imagine what that city looked like? Coming like 5 miles away, you look up and you see these golden walls and the temple all golden. And the light of the sun striking that, the glare would have blinded you. And he's simply saying, you are as beautiful as Tirzah, as lovely as Jerusalem. You radiate. That's what he says about Abishag. Then he says this is kind of funny, I think. You're as awesome as an army with banners. Man, I look at you, and you remind me of the Israeli army going around with their flags. That's what a banner was. This, the army, you've been to military, we've all seen military parades, haven't we? Isn't it great to see these soldiers, they got their rifles, got their flags, and they're in step, and sometimes you got the military band playing. It's very patriotic, very awesome, it's inspiring, it just makes your heart throb. That's what he's comparing to. You remind me of an army with its flags. You're so beautiful, so eye-catching. You move me. He says, turn your eyes away from me, for they have overcome me. Oh, he's saying, don't look at me. Your eyes have overcome me. Your eyes slay me. For they've overcome me. Your hair, he did this before. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down from Gilead. And we laughed about that. But remember, Gilead was a mountain, and he would look up and see these mountain goats coming down, and at a distance, it looked like a black stream coming down. You just see this movement, like down her side of her face and by her neck, over her shoulder. That's what he's saying. That's what your hair's like. You're like a flock of goats coming down from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep. They're white, come up from the washing. Everyone bears a twin. You got this tooth and this tooth, this tooth and this tooth. They're all matching. There's no gaps. There's no snaggle tooth. You got all your teeth. He says none is barren among them. You're like a piece of pomegranate, or your temples behind your veil. He says your side, your face, pomegranate, beautiful, yellow or red or pink, whatever a pomegranate is. Then he says there are 60 queens and 80 concubines, virgins without number. My love is the only one. He says, look, the royal stable of concubines and queens, the royal harem, 60, 80, doesn't matter. You are the best. You're the perfect. You're the only one. The only one of her mother. The favorite of the one who bore her. The daughters saw her and called her blessed. The queens and the concubines, they praised her. As she would walk through the royal house and all the other harem there, they just were amazed at her. Praised her. Verse 10, who is she who looks forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, awesome as an army with banner? There he goes, comparing her to a military army marching with this precision, this perfection, its banners, its colors, its patriotism. And he just praises her with his heart. That brings us down to verse 11. She talks again. This is their reconciliation. It's what I call a pretty good makeup session. I mean, really. And you know one thing? Nobody brought up what happened earlier. I mean, I've read this. I don't see anything where he said, okay, the next time I come and knock on that door, I expect you to get up and open that door. Nor does she say, look, next time you come at 10 o'clock looking for love, you better have a good reason for being late. You better send somebody to tell me what's going on. No, none of that. None of that. They want reconciliation, and pride enters not into it. It's submissiveness. It's both are repentant, both are sorry. They want reconciliation. Look at verse 11. She says, I went down to the garden of nuts. So apparently he had a almond farm. Or I passed through church one time. Across the street from the parsonage was a peanut farm. And I remember they would come in, the crop dusters, and my daughter, Barbara Lane, we would sit on the front porch facing that peanut patch. Actually, it must have been, I'm a terrible guesser at acreage, but I'm thinking it was 20 acres of peanuts. And that plane would come over here, circle around, and come right towards the parsonage. And he would come way down. I mean, he's coming right at us. And the highway, little country road, because this is out like 20 miles from Hardy's, way out there. And he'd come right towards the house. And my daughter, who comes here, Barbara, y'all know Barbara Lane, we grab our hands like, is he going to pull up in time? And sure enough, we shoot up over the house. So when you go to the garden of nuts, that's what I'm thinking about. It's a garden where they grew nuts of some sort, to see the verdure of the valley, to see whether the vine had budded, the pomegranates had bloomed. Before I was even aware, my soul has made me the chariots of my noble people. She's looking down, and look how she describes herself. This is how she feels. The vine has budded. The pomegranates have bloomed. Now, is she talking literally about the vines and the pomegranates? No. That's a figure of speech for her heart. Her heart, her emotions, her way she's feeling for her husband. The vine is budded, man. I got grapes out all over. Pomegranates are blooming. There's beautiful flowers coming out. And before I was even aware, my soul had made me as the chariots of my noble people. You say, now, what is he talking about? Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at the New King James. I just can't seem to break away from something new. But even with the New King James, I don't have any problem getting into the Hebrew and seeing what it means. And this phrase, my noble people, is the word Ami Nadib. Now say that with me. Ami Nadib. Ami Nadib. And it refers to an expert chariot racer. To like an army of chariot racers. Now, I had a good time on Sunday afternoon. Susie had recorded Ben-Hur. And I love that chariot scene towards the end. Remember? You got that chariot scene, and he's out to get Masala, his best friend, who tried to kill him and all. And he gets killed, of course. But you watch these chariots. It's amazing. And I did some research as to how they filmed that back in 1959. How they filmed it. And how many horses, unfortunately, didn't make it because of the realism of that scene. But Ben-Hur, Judah Ben-Hur, he won it. He was an excellent professional chariot racer. And all those there were the same. He just ended up being the best. And so what she's saying is, my soul is made because of Solomon. He's praised me. He's loved me. He's pursued me. He has complimented me. And he said this about me. And he's raised me up. And because of that, my soul has made me like the chariots of the Aminadab, the noble people. I feel like I am a winning, prize-winning, trophy-winning chariot racer. These people were famous in there. That's like the Bolshevik, the ballet, right? Isn't it a ballet? And then what are some other, how about that thing? I've never seen it, the Cirque du Soleil. That's what she's saying. I feel like I am very elevated. I am perfected. I am admired. People come to see me. He's just lifted her up, and I feel like I'm part of this Aminadab. I am the most noble chariot racers that people admire, and they follow me and they watch me. That's how I feel. My soul's made me that way because that's how he's made her feel. And I'm thinking, guys, it didn't take a whole lot for us to build our spouses up, does it? Doesn't take much. It's easy to tear somebody down. You burnt the eggs again, didn't you? Takes no skill no intelligence to tear somebody down, be it a church member or a spouse or a child or someone you work with or a neighbor. But it takes a lot to build somebody up. It takes determination. It takes forethought. Sometimes it takes real imagination. But that's how he made her feel. That's how he made her feel. And so he says to her, return, O Shulamite. Return, that we may look upon you. And then she says, what would you see in the Shulamite? As it were, the dance of two camps. Is that what the dance of two camps? Is that what I am? That we can do that? That's what you want? The dance of two camps? That's how he has lifted her up. That's how he has made her feel. I think their reconciliation is pretty well affected. I don't know where they ended up at the end. I'll ask Solomon one day, where'd y'all end up after chapter 6? When you got to chapter 7, what happened there? He'll probably say, none of your business. So anyway, we're going to stop there with 5 and 6. 4 minutes early. We will pick it up next week in chapter 7. We'll do chapter 7. And then we will do chapter 8 the following week, and we'll be done. I mean, trying to think what, normally when we finish a study, I bring something special. Remember when we studied Ruth, the book of Ruth, I brought a whole basket of Baby Ruth candy bars. And I don't recall what else we've done. But I'm trying to think what we can do for the Song of Solomon that I can bring on that last day. So pray God will give me some wild and crazy thing that I can bring that we can share together on that last Thursday. So, any questions? Susie, can y'all hear her? Okay. Yeah. Not just beloved, but they were friends. Yes. That is so important to a woman that her husband is her friend. Yes. And the other thing, she was his only one. A woman needs that security. Yeah. I'm not in competition with somebody else. You're the only one. And he had to make her feel that way. He had to make her feel that way. Do you think he did by his words and his actions? If his actions followed what he said. Yeah. Bill?
Betty and I were in Russia some years ago. Early on in your talk tonight, you talked about him not sleeping in the same bedroom.
Yeah.
The palaces we went to, they were separated, but in each closet there was a set of steps, and up in the attic was a pathway over to the other's room. We found that very
interesting. I wonder if that was followed in the Mideast. Very cool. Thank you, Bill. Maybe that's how attics started. Okay. I like being able to talk about this stuff with mature senior adults because kids giggle, even young couples will elbow each other. That doesn't happen here. But we're able to appreciate these things as God intended. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Anybody else? I don't want to cut anybody off.
Well, my daughter gave me this woman's, well, I don't have it with me, but the Woman's Study Bible.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And it explains a lot about the book, Song of Solomon. I didn't bring it today, but this Bible this is David Jeremiah's.
Yeah.
And he says, chapter 7 is going to be about real life romance. I guess, I never looked at Solomon
I know.
that way.
And most
It
didn't.
just went, when I read it, and it went over my,
Yeah.
in and out, and I forgot it. And I never thought about what it meant.
Yeah, it's a real romance. It's a historical story. That's why, and when I read it, and I read commentaries, well, this represents God's feelings for Israel or Christ for the church. And I know marriage is a picture of Christ in the church. The New Testament is very clear about that. But there's too many things in the Song of Solomon that you can't apply to Israel or the church. It's much better to look at it as a historical, real story. Not that Solomon, as an Old Testament king, can't model Christ in some ways. And Abishag, as an Old Testament wife, can't in some way represent God's people. But by and large, you're right, it's a historical story that he wrote. And it's the best song he wrote. Remember the Song of Songs? He wrote how many songs? Thousands. And it was the best one. Best one. Anybody else? I don't want to cut you off. Okay. Well, let's have prayer. Perry, thank you again for coming and doing this every week. We appreciate it. I don't think you've missed a week, have you? You ain't missed a week, have you? I don't think so. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for answering our earlier prayer. We thank you for helping us get through 2 chapters, Lord. And I think we did justice to each one. And I thank you for the sharing, the commentary that we have, that we've shared today with one another. Now, Lord, I ask you to give us safety to our homes. Bring us back again Sunday for worship and Sunday school, small groups. We thank you for all you've done for us, mostly for saving us. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes on him should not perish, will not perish, must not perish, but shall have everlasting life. What a wonderful truth that never grows old and never passes away. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Be safe going home.